me through the process with your like writing style because like
Yeah.
again there are so many sci-fi and fantasy and horror and psychological thrillers, and I've had a lot of authors on this podcast, but like I don't know, there's something about where in my gut, maybe it's my soul, when I just like feel like, oh my god, there's something here.
You.
I gotta dig, I gotta figure this out.
So my usually when I first have a project I want to write, it's been inspired by either a scene from like a daydream, mainly inspired through a song lyric or a music video or just an album, something that's planted some sort of image in my head, and I'll write to find the story that can come from that image. 8 times out of 10, the story never really comes to fruition. But so I'll do a draft, and it's just me word vomiting down a page, and then I'll take the draft, and it feels like if there is enough like thought out plot, enough characterization, enough meat on that trash draft, I'll move forward to rewriting it to an actual first draft, second draft. The third draft is when I usually go to beta readers, but I'm part of a writing group and they see all of the early pages and try to help me get it all cleaned up as best I can. And then I do a fourth draft with beta reader comments, and then I do a fifth draft with a professional editor just to make sure it's as clean as polished as I can make it. I'm a terrible speller, so they always help me find all my like homonyms that I've
Same,
missed, and it's
same.
the worst. Phonics never worked for me.
I it's interesting because I started writing music a few years ago, and what was really interesting is about like with writing music is that I found like you don't have to be perfect. I
No.
like to be able to rhyme, but sometimes it doesn't really matter to me. I don't really care. I sometimes like to add in very dark and deep ideas, but people, you do not understand. The second that turns into a chapter, turns into a novel, and then you realize like, okay, like this is gonna be easy. And then you're like 30 pages in, and then you start actually struggling because then you have
Yeah.
all of this, and then you gotta start having to like structure the story, and then
Hmm.
what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do?
My first book I wrote, Wildfire. It's that superhero book one,
Is that on
and
your website?
it should be, yep, it should be right under the Failing Gravity book. It released in 2022, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
here it is. Okay.
Yeah. But when I wrote that, it was inspired by a Dungeons and Dragons game. The game ended, but I wasn't ready to let the character go, so I was putting her in all kinds of alternate universes. And
Of course.
when I was doing the superhero one, before I knew it, I had 30,000 words and a full like middle to like start, middle, end to a story. And I thought, wow, if I can do this, I can try to write a legit novel. And so I started doing a bunch of self-teaching, a bunch of like YouTube videos and how to write books, and a lot of like blogs and podcasts, and then I started rewriting that whole novel to make it a full-fledged 50,000, 60,000. It ended at 83,000 words, so I'm going from 30 to 83 was real. I didn't think I'd be able to tackle that many words, but just to see it grow and take shape and become a full book.
It's it's hard, because the thing is like just to be able to keep track of all of the characters and just the storyline and yeah, okay. I think also I've talked to a few filmmakers about this too, and I've kind of noticed this pattern as well. A lot of the times where you have films that are being made now, that the story is absolute trash. And I'm specifically talking about like even where you're dealing with like Marvel or DC or
Hmm.
things that are coming out of Sony. It's just like I'm sitting there and I'm just like, this is so unnecessary. You could have spent the last 10 minutes just developing the character, but it's too slow. We can't make enough money
Hmm.
off of that. I'm like, but, but I barely even know who the character is, and I've
Yeah,
been watching this for an hour.
and it sucks that like even writing books now, my first thought is always, how am I going to market this? How am I going to make my agent and publisher want it? And that
Yeah.
takes the passion away from it. And so when I'm doing that trash draft, I always have to remind myself, like, we're just doing this for fun. Don't worry about the tropes you need to include. Don't worry about how you're going to market it to your agent. Just write the story, let it come out. And those are the stories that end up getting picked up by my agent and making it to the bookshelves. And Just because like that passion is still there, and like you mentioned, the lack of characterization in movies, I feel like that's the number one flaw these movies have because you can't get attached for anything, you can't root for anyone. The action fight scenes might be cool, but the what are they fighting for? What's the point?
And the amount of CGI that goes into just.
No. Yeah.
I love computers. Okay, I'm in the automotive industry, and I love electronics, and I love being that type of person that likes to do the stuff that everybody gets frustrated over. That's me. But one thing that I really do appreciate, especially with storytelling, right, is when you have a page and there's words, you have to be able to imagine all of the things in your head. Now, let's try to and I have had to learn to understand this, okay? These are stories. They're not supposed to be real. If it was real, it would be titled The Real Life Encounters of Abraham Lincoln. It's not the real life encounters of Abraham Lincoln. So when you take that and then you put it onto a screen, now it's you have real people. We've kind of veered away from animation, even though we've made The Lion King and called it live action, even though it's still animated. But
Oh,
right, so you have that dynamic where okay, so you have live people, and again, this is kind of weird, even going back to the early 1900s, how practical effects and all these things kind of develop. Like, how do you take something that's not real and then make it look real and then film it? And you can see that early adoptions for a very long time of our history until like the 21st century, where most of it was practical effects. I
because
mean, you ever watch King Kong? Like, it looks like a man in a gorilla suit.
it was a man in a gorilla
It
suit.
was a man in a gorilla suit. Or Planet of the Apes is a great example. Like, chimpanzees do not look like that at all. Like,
Mm-mm.
I've been to the zoo plenty of times, okay? Do not look like that. But it's just a product of their times. And again, it's because they're not supposed to be real. Right,
Yeah.
people? It's not supposed to be real.
It, some of the I forget what couple movies it was, but it felt like there was like an uncanny valley effect for a bunch of them. Where like this is too real, like it's you look too much like a person, and I much prefer animated films because of that. Because I'm super into kids stuff, so they're all like cutesy, but then they're able to do so much more with just the freedom of being animated and hand drawn and stuff. And
I kind of realized that recently because they made a live action version of Lilo and Stitch. And I'm 26. I grew up when Lilo and Stitch came out. I was one of the kids that watched it as a child. Now, as an adult, being able to see, this is an interesting thing, especially when you're writing stories, because you have this dynamic now, especially when you start putting ink to paper, where in your mind you have as a child watching something that clearly is animated, clearly is not real, clearly is made up and fictional. It's just a story. And then you move 20 odd years into the future to now where they make a quote unquote live action version. And then you see why it was never made live action to begin
yeah,
with.
it's like oh, like I'll give Disney credit. Their
Yeah,
live action Stitch it looks really cool.
it's good. Don't get me, it's
Yeah,
good. I mean, is it gold star good? No. No. It's good.
but they didn't need
But
to remake Lilo and Stitch. That movie was 10 out of 10
fine.
perfection. Yeah.
And keep in mind, I mean, growing up with Disney Channel and just all of the programs, we had a lot of Lilo and Stitch stuff to begin with. We had 4 Lilo and
Hmm.
Stitch movies. We had TV series. Like,
They're,
you
oh,
know,
they're just milking the machine instead of making new content. Mm.
it's the same thing that happened with Star Wars. I was talking with somebody about this a while ago too, where I think we both know this because especially when you're nerdy and geeky and stuff like that. Like, most people don't focus on this shit, but we do. And we already had a lot of information when the Phantom Menace, Revenge of the Sith. When these movies came out in the early 2000s, we already had a lot of backbone of what was going on in Star Wars, and then we got Clone Wars, which was an animated series, and kind of
Mhm.
broke down a lot more of what we were missing. And then Disney comes along because George Lucas, I don't know, maybe his drugs he didn't learn from Stephen King to just stop in the 80s. And he just sells it over to Disney, and then Disney completely forgets that we've had the whole 90s of graphic novels and
Yeah.
books and comic books, and then we've got the three movies, the sequel that came out in the, and then they give us seven, eight, and nine, and then they give us all of these TV shows that don't even correlate anywhere close to any
Yeah.
of the Star Wars universe. It's like I
Didn't Disney release, like, all the things that were now canon for them, but, like, excluded all the novels, excluded all the games, and, like, it kind of a slap in the face because so much history was there, and yeah.
say I was talking to somebody about this also too, with especially with the Ahsoka Tano is a great example of this
Mhm.
too. I'm like, guys, there's literally TV shows and comic books and shit about the character. Like, why the hell are you making her this, like, quote unquote, feminism of the era? Like, it's freaking Star Wars. Like,
M
she's
make a new
supposed.
character. Yeah.
Telling you,
Ugh.
telling you. This is the shit that gets under my nails, and I can't. I can't. And it's not because, like, I can do anything about it. It's, again, when you're an artist and when you're somebody that's creative and you're spending the time to making these things. And again, like, we take inspiration from these things. These are the things that shape who we are as people. Like, we spend time with people that love this stuff. We create things that come from this inspiration. And then you have the big dogs that come around and it's like, yeah, we want a new ride in Disney World. Yeah, but I don't have money to go to Disney World. Yeah, but we
Or
don't
no one
care.
does.
We need a new ride at Disney World. I'm like, okay, but then you need to make 3 TV shows? Yeah, because then it correlates with the rides in Disney. I'm not making this up. This is literally what
No.
Disney has
Oh.
done. They've made 3 TV shows literally just to make 3 rides in Disney World and Disneyland. That's it.
Oh, I would love to see the statistics for the people who, like, watch the show and they're like, "I have to go on the ride now," because there's I can't imagine that's a high number.
It's, again, like you were saying earlier, which is really true. It's like getting in your head that, okay, when I write the story, I can't use words like transvestite. I can't talk about feminist rights. Like, I can't talk about gay things in my book because these are all things that are, questionable, and they get into gray areas. I'm like, you don't really have to mention they're gay. You could just have
No.
where the character just
Just
is.
show them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Like,
Yeah.
very
You
simple. You don't
don't
need to mention
oh,
it. You know,
like
it,
the oh, I'm reading a book right now. I won't say it, and it's a very enjoyable book, but it is so heavy on the whole. Like, I'm oppressed because I'm a woman, and I'm not gonna let you forget that I'm oppressed because I'm a woman. But like, she's a total like butt kicker. She's super gorgeous. She's got all these skills, and she's still held down because she's a woman. And it's like I'm not buying it because you're showing me that you're not. Um,
Do you know how many women I've had on this podcast that are artists and creators? I've done like over 200 episodes, and a majority of them were females. And they're
mhm.
all artists and creators and makers and doers. I sound like a Home Depot commercial. But but I mean, that's the point. It's like, I understand that there's feminism. I understand there's a movement. I understand, especially in the artist world, there's definitely this, male dominant stereotype. Agreed. However, there are plenty of women that shape their way within that, in very niche genres, especially like
Mhm.
horror. Um, like, we're in the 21st century. It's 2025, and we need to get our heads out of the sand and just realize, like, not every story needs to tell the tale of old time,
Mhm.
because we don't live in that time anymore. We don't live in the time anymore. We don't.
No, we I mean, from like a I feel like and of course it's because like a bunch of old people are running everything, but it's such a fear of change and trying something different because like, "Oh, well, what if we include this in a book and we mass produce it, put it on the shelves, and it doesn't sell?" And we just can't take that risk, and it's but, like, the generation who is reading, they want those kind of books, they want those kind of materials, those stories, and I my head is in the sand on this, unfortunately. But I'm like, if we just give it another 10 years, let some people age out, get some new people in the like the marketing agencies and the book promotion world and movie promotion world, and because they'll know that the generation under them wants these stories because they probably wanted these stories growing up.
And I think that's something that's really cool, especially with your writing style too, right? It's not something that's happened overnight. It's not something that, you know, you got that viral video on TikTok and then it just blew up. It stems from a lot of hard work, a lot of trial and error, a lot of figuring out who you are as a writer and what you want to put
Mhm,
on the page. And you know what? I think what made Star Wars and Star Trek and, series like Battlestar Galactica and Dune, and what do you call that? Mad Mad Max?
Mad Max.
Yeah.
Mhm,
The way that what made these stories so cool was just the implication of how the stories portrayed, even if there was politics involved, even if there was an evil against good. It's just I don't know. It's just memorable stories that strike humanity, they strike reality, they strike conflict, and there's no bias, there's no agenda,
mm-mm.
there's no narrative, there's no, subliminal message like Coca-Cola, throwing that out every 3 seconds in commercials.
Right. Oh. And the
Um,
examples you just gave, like I always feel like they're character forward first, and all the cool world building, all the cool politics that they show is in response to their characters' lives. And again, like a fight scene can be super cool, but if we don't know the characters' motivations, then why should we care about what they're fighting for?
I think also something we as Americans tend to forget is the fact that a lot of other industries, especially when we're dealing with writing, like graphic novels, comic book in that stream, a lot of other nations do a lot better job than we do, especially when you're dealing with Korea and Japan. Because in their culture, they don't give a shit about any of these morals. It's like a
Mhm.
hero gets beaten and gets his hand or legs chopped off. End of
Yeah.
story. No regrown limbs. Now he's a crippled superhero. End of story.
Hmm.
And as Americans, you're like, you gotta like, oh my god, this is not gonna sell. Like he's no longer. And like in Japan, they're like, but this is the character. This is his struggle. This is his legacy. And you're like, okay, all right, calm down with the kaizen over there. All right, just calm down a little bit. But that's just the difference of just culture and society. They've
Hmm.
been doing something we haven't been doing in 40 years.
Yeah. Like I feel like a lot of books, there's no consequences for a character's action, or like
No.
they'll come out of like a knife fight stabbed, and like you should really let that rest. Like, oh no, it'll be fine. Let me go right back into the next knife fight. Like,
Yeah, yeah. 4 knife fights later, you know.
and
Um,
then drink a magic potion heals it all up. But
I think one of the series that I really really love that came out of Japan, which not mistaken was a graphic novel or a book, and then was made into the TV series, which was on Netflix, which was Alice in Borderland.
oh yeah,
You could I'm sorry, you could never ever have any Americans ever make a show like that ever. Period. Never. Guaranteed.
mm-mm.
It's just I mean it makes you cry. It makes you depressed. It makes you anxious. It makes you
Mhm.
question every sense of morality because it's not just a psychological thriller. It's a an emotional thriller. It's I still like whenever I think about it, my mind just think about the person that wrote that, right?
Like what were they struggling through?
I don't even want to I don't even want to think about that because I can imagine whoever wrote that, they didn't really have a very probably didn't have a very good childhood. No. But I think that is something that's interesting about it is the fact that some of the most seriously fucked up and mentally insane people create some of the most amazing stories. You
Hmm.
know, I mean, I'm no, I'm going through all the patterns, but I mean, think about even somebody like Charles Kubrick.
That name's not familiar for me.
I think it's Charles. He was the one that made The Shining. Also
Oh,
2000.
okay.
Was it?
I'm so bad with names. You'll have to forgive me.
No, I'm bad too. This is why like I like to like throw out, and I'm just like all over the place. I'm like, I know it's there's a cube in there. Stanley Kubrick. That's the name.
Stanley Kubrick.
Stanley
Hmm.
Kubrick. And let's be very honest with ourselves. Like the man was freaking insane. I
Yeah.
mean, he was a nutcracker. I mean, he was a lunatic. but throughout his craziness, he was able to create some of the most surreal, most avant-garde films that we have. So, I guess the question that I'm throwing out there is, do you need psychopathic crazy people in order to make good content?
I don't think I hope you don't. I hope that's not a requirement. But for me, like, there's a saying in writing, it's write what you know. But you can always find out more to write things you don't know. But to have lived through certain experiences allows you to like show those certain experiences in very real ways. For like a loss of a parent, a loss of a child, like moving across the country, like those major elements. It's hard to write if you don't have a firsthand or secondhand experience, and so I hope you don't have to be a psychopath to make a good story, but I think having suffered elements of life helps you connect with readers. That way they know they're not alone. Like oh, I felt that way too, and just kind of this shared collective of emotions through writing, through storytelling.
And by the way, to your point, it happens a lot of the times, even within music. You get a lot of songwriters where they make music that has nothing to do with their life at all. I,
Mm-hmm.
and like great example of like talking like within the realm of like hip hop and rap, you got the Beastie Boys, which they created amazing songs and crazy amazing albums, but they were a bunch of rich kids that grew up in cushion lives, never really had any trauma or hell to begin with, but yet
Mm-hmm.
they wrote songs about partying and doing drugs and growing up on the streets, and it's like, but they didn't go through any of those things. So to your
Yeah.
point, you're right. Like you don't necessarily need to be like crazy. You just need to be able to put yourself in there to be able to write it. Like you gotta,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, almost act the part in order to play the part. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. All right. Oh. But it's just it's wild in so many regards because we think of it as just as a story, but it's not. Like there's so many things that are coming in order for that to be even made. Like I know I was talking to you earlier about even with you and your with you writing your own stories, and obviously you've written a bunch of books, but I'm sure they didn't start out the way that they finished.
No, they never do. And like I feel like I never know the importance of why I wrote a book until like 6 months after it's released or it's been picked up by the publisher, I really get to sit with it. Like, why did I tell this story? And it baffles me that like I didn't realize why I was writing it during the writing, but looking back on it, I can be like, oh, yep, that does make sense because I was thinking about this and I was doing that, and it came through these pages, hopefully without me like with a big neon sign, like the theme of the book is this.
I think not trying to get too heebie jeebie or too
Oh, you're
sci-fi
fine.
out there, but I think that a lot of these stories, okay, if we want to get into that realm, could actually be real. Okay, in the sense where I don't know, I've thrown this idea out for a long time where it feels almost with like I have this too, like because when you start writing, it's very odd. It's almost like you feel like something's flying into your brain and you start getting these like visions and these like
Yes.
sentences, and it feels as if like you're in that person's shoes even though
Mm-hmm.
they're made up. They're not, you made this up, it's not
Yeah.
real. And then all of a sudden you're like, you look at the what you just wrote and you're like, this doesn't make any sense. And then you rewrite it and then you're like, oh, that's right, because it was supposed to be written like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's so, I don't know, it's like almost spiritual in the sense of like,
Yeah.
are we just writing stories from parallel universes that exist
Ooh.
amongst ours?
For the my superhero novel, the main character is Abigail, and whenever I feel a little down or a little like I can't do this, I always think like, what would Abigail do? She can do it. I can do it. So that makes me over the moon that maybe in another parallel universe I am Abigail.
You don't
Yeah.
know. You don't know.
Don't know.
You don't know. But I think that's something that's really fascinating. Have you ever read or watched The Man in the High Castle?
No, no,
Do you know anything about the story?
I do not. I'm a
Okay.
terrible reader.
No, no, it's okay. I only watched the TV series, so you're okay. So The Man in the High Castle, I forgot the one who wrote the book, but it's a parallel universe as instead of us winning World War II, we lose the war, and the
Ooh.
Axis power wins. So it's very bizarre because what basically happens is in the United States, it becomes the new Reich. That's what they literally call it. And then there's
Mhm.
the neutral zone, and then there's the South Pacific states. So the US gets split between the Japanese on the west and the Germans on the east.
Yeah.
And okay, spoiler alert, because I don't think anybody over here is going to be watching this. But basically, the premise of the story is where the Nazis figure out a way of like crossing the barrier and going into different parallel universes. Their
Okay.
idea is basically to take over other Earths and like Nazi terraform. Um, I mean, the story is just bizarre in so many different directions, but that to me is something like who the hell would ever think about that? Who would ever want to
Right.
think about the Nazis winning or the Russians winning the space race or them winning the Cold War? No one wants to think about that. But then somebody actually like takes the time and writes a whole story about it. You're like,
Ugh.
woof, woof.
Wolf is right. I can't. Oh my gosh. Like, even if like the end of the game is that the main cast of characters can like overcome it and like undo it or whatever. Could you imagine just having to think about all the things that would have changed if they had won? Like, just all like the evilness and darkness in the world.
We would be smelling burning bodies every single time we drive on the highway.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like I know that's like a very surreal thing to think about, but yeah. Like you
Oh.
you get diagnosed with cancer, they're cremating you alive.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Yeah, there's no because you're not pure. You're no longer pure. It's like
Oh.
that's what I'm saying
Oh.
is like just to think that that could have actually been our reality is just
Frightening.
mind-boggling. And that, again, that's like ideas of like even Alice in Borderland kind of portrays. Like you literally take yourself out of reality and you put yourself in a world where you have to stand there and watch people die in front of you. And then if you don't win the game, you die along with them. And then you have no idea where
Hmm.
you even go. And then you meet all of these wonderful people and then they all start dying in front of you. Like that is so far from reality.
Yeah. But people eat it up.
They love it. They love violence. They love playing it. They love reading it. They love experiencing. They love putting themselves in that situation all the freaking time. It's like, don't go down the basement. But I want to.
Oh,
Don't go
I can't.
down.
I can't watch horror movies because I get freaked out for too long after them. But some of the older slasher ones I can handle with all the lights on, of course, and they are so dumb. Like, why would you go to the scary basement? Why would you go to the woods? Why would you walk into that barn? Just get in your car and leave.
That's honestly why I personally like comedy horror over
Mhm.
regular horror. Like, especially series like Scary Movie
Yeah.
and Scream. I I even if it's been like years since these movies come out, like you sit there and you just laugh your ass off because obviously people are getting killed in these movies, but it's a comedy, it's a parody. Like I don't remember
Mhm.
which scary movie it was. I think it was the second one or the third one. I'm paraphrasing, but there was a scene where they had security cameras in the house and they were like scared shitless of like going around. So they're like watching these security cameras. And then the cleaning lady in the house, she I don't know, thought there was like demons or something. She slaughters a chicken. She's spraying blood everywhere. She's opening up a cross. She's spraying holy water all over, and they're just looking and they're like, "Damn, this lady's crazy." He's sitting there. But that's what I'm saying too. Like I know what you're saying. It's like you get too anxious and giddy, and you're just like, I can't. I can't. This is too much. Like give me just some fun, Let
Right, a dumb cartoon.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, watching, while what's his name? The coyote getting his head hit by an
Oh,
anvil. And he's like
Wiley.
yeah, he's like "Beep." He like steers up and then like bam.
Oh, I love Looney Tunes.
I do
I just
too.
watched Scream for the first time like 2 years ago, and it became
Really.
one of my favorite movies just because of how silly it is and how
It's not real
like
at all.
it's
Like the
not real
blood is
yet.
fake, the knives are all fake, everything's fake.
Hmm. So, oh.
They didn't do anything to make it real at all. You just like see a person like ah. You see like it kind of retracts, it just goes in like eh.
Mm.
You just fall on the ground and you're like, okay. All right. They cut like 2 seconds later, and the guy walked off the stage. But
Like, wait a second.
but you know what though? Storytelling wise, okay, somebody greenlit that many years ago, and you get a bunch of executives today to try to greenlit that. They're like, this is stupid. Nobody's gonna want to watch this. But somebody did greenlit it, and it
Yeah,
was
and it's
made.
sort of a phenomenon nowadays.
Nobody makes movies like that anymore. Name me
No.
one horror movie that's like that. I can't think of one that's come out
It
recently.
I don't know if maybe just the mass production of movies we get every year, but it like I remember when Avengers and or the original Avengers came out and like that was an event and now like there's a
Who
new
cares?
superhero movie every other month and like
Who cares?
there's sort of I don't want to say it lost its appeal. I'm a big superhero fan, but I just can't like drum up the excitement anymore. Like, but so maybe it's like the the amount of movies we get each year, everything just sort of gets a little forgotten.
It's also just the amount of stuff that's being thrown at our faces constantly. Something that we kind of forget is too, like, we've had the internet since 1995
Hmm.
publicly. I mean, the internet has been around. Believe it or not, actually, the internet was invented in the early 70s. Um, yeah, which is crazy. But what that basically has done, where there was a time where you were kind of limited based on your community and your surroundings. You had a record store, you had a recording center, you had an electronics store. You had people that you would talk to. Quentin Tarantino has talked about this a lot. He said that video rental stores used to be a place that people used to get their entertainment and find out what their entertainment was. Because you would go in
Ooh,
there and you'd have your three kids, and you're like, I don't know what to give these kids. And then the guy would be like, oh, what does your kids like? Like, oh, they're like
yeah,
superheroes. Oh, okay. Well, I have actually something that I just recently just watched. I think you kids might actually like this. You're like, oh, okay, cool. You see what I mean? We went from
yeah,
that to now you just got some random guy named Tom. Like, hey guys, so I just watched MCU with Gabrielle, and we had an amazing time. Like, we went from that 30 years ago to this, which
yeah.
is
It. I
wild.
mean, it's so easy to communicate nowadays, but I feel like we've lost a sense of community.
We've lost a sense of community, and even like being able to understand of like how people have been able to experience entertainment.
Yeah.
It's talking to people and exploring new things. Like, there are things that you have watched that another person hasn't. Like,
Hmm.
we've been talking back and forth, and there's things that
Yeah.
I've seen that you haven't seen. You know, and just that in and itself allows people to be able to explore new things. But the second you start throwing TikTok and Facebook and Instagram reels with all these
Yeah.
quote unquote movie and TV reviewers, and it gets really watered down.
Yeah. Or like so many times I will hear the same opinion over and over again, and it makes me have that opinion even without having ingested the product, and I hate that because like I should be able to inform my own opinion. I should want to go and see the movie, read the book, but I've just heard two or three negative comments like, "Oh, well, I'm not gonna like it then," and I feel like I've lost that need to acquire that opinion for myself nowadays. Because like I don't think I'm gonna go see the Lilo and Stitch movie just because of how they changed the ending, and I was really excited to see it. And
She didn't need to go to college.
she didn't need to go to college, or she could have went in state.
And the thing that pissed me off the most is the fact that they changed Ohana. So they literally changed the meaning of the phrase, which I literally have freaking tattooed on my arm. Which,
Oh, oh,
mhm. So the phrase was supposed to be Ohana means family, and family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten. They
yeah.
changed it to Ohana means family and nobody gets left behind, so
Can
that
the
they
kids
can
today?
so they can have her go off to college. Because otherwise, if they had the full phrase, it wouldn't make sense for the story. And
Yeah.
then the way that they corrected the fact that she goes to college is obviously spoiler. You're not
Yep.
watching this thing to watch movies. Um, they had where he basically opens up a portal so she can go from her college dorm back into their house. That's how they
Okay.
that's how they solve the problem of her going to college.
So there's even not a consequence for her going to college.
No,
Everything's all nice, tight, and bowed up at the end.
Okay, let's let's discuss the elephant in the room. Okay, this is clearly a way of trying to force this feminism quote unquote movement on people. All right, just because you have two sisters that lose their parents and they're living in Hawaii, even though keep in mind this movie came out 20 years ago and Hawaii was still extremely expensive. Hawaiians are different than other states, very similar to
Mhm.
how Puerto Rico operates, where communities take care of each other. So if somebody's struggling or if they lose loved ones, even though it's very high cost of living, people try to come together and try to help out, which was kind of the message that was the original Lilo and Stitch movie.
Yeah.
And then this movie they kind of made where, well, she can't take care of Lilo and, social services are involved and she must go to college in order to continue her profession. But that's not Hawaiian culture. They keep forcing
Mm-mm.
Hawaiian culture throughout the movie, but like in Hawaiian culture, if somebody like that is struggling, the family comes together, regardless of college, regardless of jobs.
That's such a big thing to miss.
It is.
Oh,
Keep throwing out Hawaiian words and ohana, and like, great that you did your research on the Hawaiian language, but that still doesn't
you could have done a
justify.
little more.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
oh,
the other thing we were talking about too, which I totally agree with you, where animation kind of plays a better role, is I love CGI, but when you try to bring these characters to life with these CGI models, like even with the Lion King, I don't that Cannon Valley effect. It's
yeah.
just, why does his eye look like a freak? Like the new Lilo and Stitch, like the alien. I forgot their names.
Oh, oh my gosh, Pleakley and Jumba.
They they look creepy and
Yeah.
weird and like,
Oh,
ugh,
I
ugh.
saw some stills of them, and they just looked like wet and sticky.
I can't get that image out. And the original series, like, I don't know, they were kind of weird looking, but they were kind of
Mm.
squishy and kind of
Yeah, they were
fluffy.
endearing.
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
fun, and they were not the villain. Okay, like, he was not the villain in the original series. I'm sorry, I'm going on this tangent. Like,
You're good. Let it out.
this is my childhood, man.
It's on your arm.
It's on my arm. Like, this is gonna be on my arm when I'm 70, man. Like, my grandchildren's gonna be like, "Why do you have a freaking alien on your arm?"
You have to show them the original. Like, no, no, no. It was from this one, the cool one.
The cool one. It's like not the original, not that this West Side Story, like the one that came out in '61. Like, what? There was another one. That's the thing too, by the way. Like, there's so many stories that they keep on just rewriting and
Oh my
rewriting, and then
god. Rewriting poorly.
you know how many Stars is Born we've had? Like 7.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine if like you wrote your book? Because I know you've written like a bunch of different series. Like, can you imagine if you wrote your character the same story but 7 different ways?
I w- I'd walk off a bridge. I would get so sick of it. Ugh. Like if, like, I mean, my first book was my first book, so there are some issues with it, with like plot points and like a few things I could have explained better. So like if I had to rewrite it one time, that would be fine because I could clean up and make things make more sense, shine some light on some things I had forgotten at the time. But two, three, four, like I would feel ashamed as a writer. Like I would need that many rewrites to make that story tell what I needed to say it.
I think what we're trying to get at, and what I'm trying to get at, is what happens, especially now with sci-fi writing. Okay, is because we're no longer in the 20th century. There is this old timey notion of where, well, we got to make it with the times, because in the 1960s and 70s we can kind of like fantasize and romanticize about the year 2000 and the year 2025 or
Mm-hmm.
2017. But now 2017, 2015 has already passed, and we're now in
Yeah.
2025. So Star Trek, of course, needs to have more female representation. Of course, Star Wars, needs to be more theoretical and more broken down and have waterless stories that have no bias or basis. Of course, we need to have sci-fi written so that we should understand of the complexity.
No.
This
I
is
love big word sci-fi because like I don't need to understand it. I just need to like
flux capacitor. What the hell does
yeah,
that mean? I
just
don't care. It's just flux capacitor,
oh
right? it's you know
You're
that's the beauty of sci-fi writing is it's fantasy. It's you know imagination. It's going beyond our understanding of reality.
mhm. We don't need, like you said, we don't need to understand it. We just need to have it. And yeah, you don't need to overcomplicate it. Oh,
But do you know how many nerds on YouTube have the conversation about how the Millennium Falcon actually goes fast? It's a movie. Okay, it's a movie. All right. I don't know. George Lucas figured out that it's cool to maybe have some lights. You know that they go hyperspeed. I don't care.
oh my
They just
god.
zip through space and voila, they're at Tatooine. Cool. That's all I need to know.
Like you're losing the enjoyment if you dive that far. And my newest book, Failing Gravity, there's a scene where like the there's these anti-gravity beams that keep a city floating, and one of the beams is like shorting out, and I brought that chapter to my writing group, and we were just cleaning it up, and it's we had like a 30-minute conversation on how much power the gravity needed. Is it really gravity? Should it be electromagnetics? I'm like, you're in the weeds, you guys. Did you enjoy it or not? So I feel ya.
Does anybody explain on how you had the floating city in Star Wars on a
I don't think
planet?
they ever did.
No, because we
No.
don't even know how it works. We just know it's a flying
Just
city on
accept
a
it for the
planet.
story.
That's
Yeah.
it. You know,
Ugh.
I think that's something that I really also like. I'll be honest. It's hard to watch through these. Okay, like I'm not gonna lie. The 1930s, especially with sci-fi films, like especially those avant-garde and black and white films, they're
Hmm.
very artsy. Very weird thing to keep in mind. Like until about the 1960s, a lot of sci-fi was just music and drama and art.
Hmm.
There really wasn't a storyline. Like even Metropolis doesn't really have a storyline. Like there's some lines, but that was different because you're kind of as the viewer you're watching this and you're kind of building the story in your head, which I
Hmm.
think was kind of the idea and notion that they were having in the 1930s and
Yeah.
40s and 50s,
Maybe 60s.
maybe 60s. They had a little too much LSD and psilocybin in their system back then because whoa. Think about it though. Look at the
Yeah.
60s and all the shit that came out of that era. I'm like, I don't know what you're smoking, but I want to share some of that. Cause
Let me see what you're seeing.
I mean, the amount of think about also like I know you love superheroes. Think of all the superheroes we got out of the '60s,
Yeah.
like the Silver
Great
Surfer.
heroes we got out of the 60s. And
Silver Surfer was this. Oh my
I
god,
think so.
I'm gonna get this wrong. I'm gonna get this wrong. I guarantee you. From
I feel like such a fake fan because like I read comics all the time, but I know next to nothing about the overworld of it and all the history. And
year. Okay, what year was the Silver Surfer?
it would have been with the
Uh,
Fantastic Four.
I think that was the '80s, if I'm not mistaken. Oh my god! But that's what I'm saying too, though. Is like there's so much history with all of this, right? Like if you tried to put on a piece of paper right now all of DC and Marvel's comic, like their superheroes and their villains, I think you'd have enough pages at, just like your new book. Like you probably have like 300 pages.
Yeah.
1966. Yes.
Nice. You
Yes, I
knew.
got that
You
right.
knew.
I knew it. I knew it. Phew. It's hard to remember dates,
I
like
yeah.
it's so hard. It's like damn.
Well, even like superheroes will break down into eras, and even like trying to keep those straight in my head, like I'll mix and match. And I know the last 10ish years pretty okay, but I feel like anything older than the 90s, I'm just twiddling my thumbs, like, oh, I know that name.
It's hard because you like I was talking about this before. You take characters even like Deadpool. Okay,
Hmm.
Deadpool in the '90s was a little ahead of its time. Like I think if most parents knew what Deadpool was in the '90s, I don't think they would be giving it to their kids. So
No.
that's why like when it came out in the like recently a couple of years ago, people are like, "Oh my god, this is amazing. Like this feels modern and fresh." It's because it was written very much ahead of its time to begin with anyway.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
like,
and they
yeah,
trusted the audience so much to be able to like piece things together and accept new realities. And like at home, me and my husband would always say like, let nerds make nerd films, because they're your intended audience. So bring it down to that level, and then if it's good with them, it's going to be good with everybody. And I felt like Deadpool really did that. They paid homage to the original hero. They had a lot of like funny jabs at the world and at the comic book industry and everything. And as a comic book fan, as a hero fan, like we loved it.
It was
And
amazing.
people who and people who don't read comics, don't know heroes, they loved it.
They
And
loved
it
it.
it can be done.
It can be, but it can be done the right way. You know,
Hmm.
we've been talking about movies and stuff, and I freaking love this shit. But when you look at even something like, you take like a villain like the Joker, and I think one of the best examples of having that portrayal was like Caesar Romero, like from the series in the 1960s.
Hmm.
And then you have something like Quentin Tarantino, which obviously grew up on the Caesar Romero Joker character, and then eventually experienced, like the Tim Burton version of the Joker, which was Jack Nicholson. And then fast forward, he comes out with the Joker, which, stars Joaquin Phoenix. But
Hmm.
this is the interesting thing because I watched the movie on film, like on 35 millimeter film, which by the way is the best way to watch
Oh
the Joker.
wow.
Yes,
Yeah.
best way to watch it. Um, you can see how closely Joaquin Phoenix is playing this character as if it's Jack Nicholson and Caesar Romero mixed together. The psychoness, the campiness, the
Hmm.
cringiness, all of that's tied into one because you're taking somebody, right? We were just saying that is an artist and a creator and is a nerd and is geeked out and has loved this shit for many, many, many years and is able to bring that into film
Hmm.
through that lens, not a marketing lens, not MCU, not numbers, not any of it. It's just an artist taking what he remembered as a child, what he experienced, and then making a movie out of that.
Yeah. Oh, that is so
Amazing.
cool to think about.
Oh my god, that movie was. I'm not gonna lie. I think Deadpool and the Joker is by far the best super like anti-hero and like villain stories
Yeah.
we've gotten in the 21st century so far.
My favorite thing when like my family and people were like seeing the joke, like, oh, it just made me really uncomfortable. Like
Yeah,
that's the whole point.
it's
Yeah.
supposed to make you feel uncomfortable. Like people don't remember like Cesar Romero was very scary to kids.
Hmm.
Very scary. Like I even remember my uncle telling me that, he remembers as a kid growing up in the 60s that the second Batman would come on and the Joker was up, he would just turn it off. He couldn't handle it. It was just too freaky.
Oh wow.
Think about it. Like try to watch one of the episodes from the original Batman series with the Joker and you're just
Hmm.
going to sit there and just like cuz he's weird. He's
He is weird.
and like keep in mind, like it's also the '60s, so people were a little, especially like Caesar Romero was not a very good guy to begin with. And there's a lot of touchy and feely, and there's stuff that's going
Hmm.
on, even though it's filmed and was put on television. You're like, I don't think that's appropriate, but it's a kids show.
Right.
But it's
So
the
it's gotta be
'60s.
okay.
Yeah, it's gotta be
Oh.
okay. But you don't have people doing that stuff anymore because again, it's not PG. It's not part of the times. It's not socially acceptable. It's not true to the character.
Nowadays, no. Nowadays, people are so scared to upset anyone. They can't. I feel like everyone's in such a tight little box because, like, oh well, what if I say this? What if I do that? And what if I wear that? And I hope as a society we can branch out of that and get away from this fear of upsetting people because I mean, no matter what you do, someone will always be upset about it, and you can't please everyone, and so like, you just got to be okay with that. And as long as you're not hurting nobody, you should be able to do whatever you need.
You know what though? I think especially for this podcast and the type of message that I try to get out, this is kind of the reason why I like authors like you is the fact that we are artists, we are creators, we love what we do, we have a strong passion, but we're tired of being told by marketing execs, told by publishers, told by editors of who we are supposed to be. Don't get me wrong. I think some marketers, some editors, some publishers, they're some of the most amazing people. They are
Hmm.
creative in their own sense, even if it's numbers or analytical thinking. But it's being able to bridge those gaps together. It's being able to sit in front of a publisher and say, hey, this is my story. And I need you to understand that I can't rewrite it because then it's not true to the story. And then them
Mhm.
being able to understand, okay, I got you. So what we have to do is then shift the way that we're going to be marketing this. Maybe we got
Yeah.
to shift this to more of a niche market. Maybe try to get this into local stores in a specific area. You know, that again, we're not trying to demonize anybody because I think everybody matters in this industry, but it's being able to bridge the gaps. Because if we continue the
Mhm.
way that we're doing, movie theaters will die, the
Yeah.
entertainment industry will die, and it will be replaced by a very digital, very much what we're doing right now.
Mhm.
And you know what? I'm not a corporate lover in any shape or sense. I feel it's important to have some physical structure, even if it's
Yeah.
large based. Because they have given us some amazing stuff. Let's not gonna lie. Like 21st Century's given us a lot of amazing stuff. Universal's given us a lot
Mhm.
of amazing stuff. So is Disney. It's just they've kind of forgotten why they were successful to begin with.
Yeah. The oh, I'm very fortunate. The my agent, my publishers, they're very like they see the vision I want and they help me get to where I need to be to nail in order to show it, in order to say it.
Right.
So I'm very fortunate that I've got them in my corner.
And you know what though? That just showcases a way of being able to, like I said, being able to bridge the gap.
Mhm.
It's they're not writers. Okay, they're not. They're not writers. I guarantee you, try to get them to write a freaking letter. There's going to be more mistakes on there than you can ever make mistakes. But they're able to see the other side of what you can't see as a writer.
Exactly.
And you know what though? I being serious, I think this is the reason why we get ourselves into a lot of trouble. Is because instead of being able to try to work through conflict and having conversations and talking about things, we point fingers, we start
Mhm.
wars, we threaten writers, we threaten actors, we threaten creators. It's not a way. It's not a
No.
way. This is not how we grow and thrive as artists as a community. It's just not how it works.
Ooh, no. And like, oh my gosh, it in that same breath, people are so afraid of conflict. They I feel like in my day job, I work with college students, and I feel like they have no sense of how to stand up for themselves and like speak up when like something's not like if like oh this is just the way of the world. Like no, it's not. If there's a problem, you need to let us know so that we can help you handle it and get it taken care of and like just to find their voice again and find that they're able to stand on their own and yeah.
Really being able to do that. Like on a completely different side note, I have a 14-year-old car, and as somebody that's training to be an automotive technician, I have experience with cars. You know, you tend to forget, and like this is also in the artist industry where you get this type of abuse where you have somebody that quote unquote is the expert, and they think of you as you don't know shit. I could pull the wool over you, like.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, you get what I like to call Honest Joe. And Honest Joe is that sweet, kind person
Mm-hmm.
that's, we'll take care of you. Don't worry. We got you. Like, don't worry. Don't worry about the warranty claims. Like, we got your back. And then in reality, what it turns out is that they basically throw every single wrench, nail, and screw and try to figure out and make a problem out of thin air. And
Mm-hmm.
then when you point out their blunders and mistakes, they start blaming you and say, "Well, you know, if you take your car,
Oh
their warranty is going to deny this, and they're not going to take care of this, and then you're going to have all these problems." Yada yada. Yada. And then again, even though this has to do with cars, you can kind of tie this back even
yeah.
with writing. You sit there and you say to yourself, "But I know this. This is
Yeah.
what I do." Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I may not be an expert. Okay, I may not be Stephen King. Okay, most of us are not freaking Stephen King, but what you're telling me is lies. You're
Yeah.
pulling the wall over me, and I know you're pulling over the wall over me. That right there is a skill that I think, especially if you're working with college students, is so freaking lost among people. It's like, don't be afraid to stand up, even if somebody's telling you
Exactly.
that you're wrong. Okay? You have that conversation and you try to, and if you are genuinely wrong, okay, tell the other person, tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Give me the
And
reason
there's nothing
why.
wrong with being wrong. Like there will be
No,
situations you don't know enough to be right, but yeah, it's okay to be wrong, but not okay to have the wool pulled over you and taken advantage of.
you need to be able to be comfortable with conflict, because the reality of it is, and I'm going to be very serious, like, again, a lot of artists, I think, even such as ourselves, like, you need to be able to have that other avenue and be able to financially to stay stable.
Mhm.
But if you cannot stand your own ground, you are going to fail personally. Like, it's not about creating numbers. It's not about being a huge superstar. It's you personally. You will never, ever be able to grow as an artist. You will always be stuck as, I'm sorry to be that man, but you're going to be that guy that's on that bass guitar, all right, in that bar for 29 years, and that's all you do. I mean, it's a great career, but you could do better than that. Oh, come
The the being comfortable with conflict is such a great, yeah, and
on.
to,
Right?
yeah, and to, I know, like, growing up, if there were ever, like, not, like, massive problems, but, like, my parents allowed me to fail, and if I had to figure out something, they wouldn't swoop in and take care of it. They allowed me to figure it out on my own, they allowed me to fail, they allowed me to ask questions, and I feel like that's lost because it that takes more time to let kids, to let people figure things out on their own versus someone who knows just to come in, swoop in, take care of it for them, and then they never learn how to problem solve. They never learn how to ask questions and how to sit with failure and not let it crush you. Because I see that. I feel like I see that a lot. But
Especially people my age. Like, I'm not trying to give any form of judgment or anything of that, but you see a lot of not being able to stand on your own 2 feet.
yeah.
This idea of notion, and again, I'm not trying to be criticizing of YouTube and social media influencers. Like, kudos to them, but my God, you got to be able to get out of your head out of the ass. Like, literally, get your head out
Hmm.
of the ass. Because you got to be real with yourself. You need to be able to have some discipline in your life. You need to be able to have some
Yeah.
structure. You need to have some financial stability in your life. you know I trust me, like, I crave to be creative and passionate all the freaking time, but you gotta be able to balance this shit, man.
Hmm.
You can't just be like, well, I'm gonna be the next John Lennon. um
Ah,
Not happening.
no.
It's
I
just
hope
not
you
happening.
do, but I just no.
No, it's
Or
not.
there are so many times, and like I even fell for this when I was little, or little when I was like graduating college. If like I wanted to be a rock and roll journalist, and I applied to one music magazine and I got denied. I'm like, well, that's it. I'm never gonna be a rock and roll journalist then. And to understand, like, you got to work into it. You've got to work those small gigs first. You got to do things that might not be 100% what you thought they were in order to get where you want to be. I mean, I feel like that's lost too on today's youth. Like, cause so many, like, I know someone who, like, where they're at and their job, they have so many kids entering the field. Like, oh, I want to start where they're at, and like they're 30 years older than you. You can't just take that CEO job. You got to work. You got to climb the corporate ladder, I guess, is what I'm saying.
It is. And even, for example, in my avenue, right, where I'm in vocational school training to be a technician, and I literally had to put myself through 12 months of this crap just so I can be put into a 12-week program with a manufacturer.
Oh
And
wow.
what that allows me to do is to basically start off as level 3 at, when I enter, like, a dealership bay, like, into the service bay. And that is not something that is easy that happens. They're trying to cram in 3 years of information in 12 weeks. You know what I'm saying? We
Hmm.
like to take the short road for a lot of different things, but what we forget is, what are the costs to be able to do that? It's your sanity, it's your mental health, it's
Hmm.
your physical well being, it's your social life, it's everything combined.
Yeah.
And I don't think getting into this notion of everything is easy, you're going to appease every single person that you run into. You're not. You're going to run into conflicts all the time. You're going to run into problems and situations all the time.
Yeah.
If I told you the amount of times I've had 6 or 7 problems just pop up in a matter of 4 days,
Oh.
I'm like, you hear me, right? Can you fucking slow down, please?
Let me catch my breath for a minute.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
give me a week. Like, you ever heard of, like, the Sabbath or like Sunday? Like a break.
Just one day. That's all I'm asking. Or yeah, or like there's yeah, like same breath. Like I work property management, so the company I work for, we manage properties for college students,
You are all over
and
the place.
yeah,
Jesus.
but there'll be like 3 weeks
Hmm.
where nothing, like all the buildings are good, all the tenants are happy, and then one week we'll get like
Bang.
5 calls every day. Yeah, bam, 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 and it's like it'd be so nice to sprinkle these out through the month, and but of course you can't control maintenance, or you can't control when a toilet gets clogged, or when a storm comes in and blows part of a roof off, and but
That's honestly like I know we've been talking about superheroes a lot, and one thing recently I really enjoyed was have you watched Invincible at all?
yeah, I love Invincible. Oh,
First of all, by the way, like I love the fact that every single episode is either him getting his ass kicked, his ass ripped off, his ass reattached, or reattached and then him being in a coma. And
mm-hmm.
it's pure gold. It's just like, obviously, he seems like this really like powerful, like I'm gonna beat you up, like da 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 da, and then he just sucks ass like every
Yeah,
single freaking episode. You're like, come on, you got
you can
it,
do
and then
it.
you could do it, and then you got like a purple little brother now that almost gets his like torso ripped up to shreds, you
Oh.
know, and I think that is genius because I don't know who the people that are writing this, but I know that where they're stemming this writing is from is they're like screaming on the high heavens. It's like, yo,
Yeah.
this is a Japanese anime. I think it's Japanese. It's Japanese or Korean? I think it's Japanese. It's a
Yeah.
Japanese anime series, and like we gotta stay true to the story. And then the execs are like, okay, okay, okay.
The the writers of the comic books are the same writers as The Walking Dead. And so like I'll see a lot of similarities like, "Oh my god, it's so gory. How can you get away with that?" Well, cuz they've already gotten away with it in live action, so getting away with it on the pages and on the animated screen. But oh,
Well,
oh,
we were talking about even series like Star Trek, and something that a lot of people don't know is that when Gene Roddenberry tried getting Star Trek off the ground, no one wanted it. No one. The
whoa.
person that actually helped produce Star Trek was none other than Lucille Ball, the lady from I Love Lucy. Yeah,
Yeah.
that lady was the one that helped promote Star Trek. And it's crazy to think that like we've seen these patterns happen so many times. Like there was another series kind of also in the realm of Star Trek, which was The Expanse, which was very also
Mm,
based on
mhm.
science and actual like realistic understanding of how physics and things work.
Yeah.
Series got canceled, and then Amazon came along and they were like, "Okay, we got you.
We'll give it a shot.
We'll give it a
Mhm.
shot." And then it blew up. It blew
Yeah.
up. So that's what I'm saying though is like when you have that message, you have that story, and you're just like, yeah, but nobody's gonna want this. Yeah, but somebody is gonna want it.
Mhm.
That
You
person
can't
may
you
have
don't
been.
know.
You don't know. You don't know. You just got to be able to trust. I know you can't always, but you got to sometimes trust the universe just a little. Okay?
Have
And
faith in the work. Have faith in yourself.
yeah, and understand that sometimes like if you get into a rut and it's not going the way that you want to, it's okay. Sometimes it's taken writers 20 years to write a book.
Mhm.
It's just
Oof.
how it is. I don't think it's taken
And
you I don't think it's taken you 20
no.
years to write
I I
it.
the joke, my husband works second shift, so we don't see each other in the evenings. And so like I have all this free time at night, and so that's where I get a lot of my writing done is while he's at work, and we don't have any kids right now. We just got a cat and a dog, and once the dog gets walked, he's pretty content with laying
Isn't that
around. And
isn't that though technically having kids? Because
I yeah, I mean, oh my god, I he goes to the dog. He goes to daycare once a week, and I feel so weird. Like I have to make sure he gets a full night's rest before he goes, and I need to make sure he eats his breakfast, or else he gets grumpy with the other kids there. And like I'm so in love with this dog. Like he's my whole wide world. Oh, this little
I
my little baby angel.
oh, there are little fur babies. I
Yeah.
have mine. She's turning 7 this year. She
Oh,
she is a calico tuxedo cat,
oh,
and
gorgeous.
she acts like a dog. I don't. I think we should have had an intervention with her years ago about this. Like, she rolls over, she likes belly scratches, she meow barks. If anybody's not curious what meow barking is like when they do the meow meow meow
Mhm.
meow. Yeah, that's meow barking. And I just like I think to myself, I'm like, oh my god, am I this crazy as an artist that I literally have a cat that is also messed up in the brain that thinks it's not a cat?
No, no. When we brought the dog home, our cat was about a year and a half, and so we joke that Lilo the cat raised Mojo the dog, and he'll sit like a cat, like he's always got a little leggy out. He'll lay on the back of the couch like she does. Like he'll do the whole like lick the paw, rub the ear thing that she does. It's like you were raised by this cat, and so
Now you're a
it's
cat. You're not a
now you're a
dog.
cat, a
You're a
little
cat.
cat dog.
Oh my god, that is a great series. I cannot believe we
Oh,
were cat dog.
Alone in the World. God,
That was
the era of those cartoons,
was
I don't think will ever be
insane.
beat.
Or Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Yeah.
Ed, Ed and Eddie.
And so many things on those shows you could not do today, and just like the topics, the jokes, and I don't know if that's why they are so great. Is because they pushed those envelopes. They weren't afraid to upset anyone. And
It's hilarious because we complain about drag queens reading to first graders, but yet we
jeez, yeah.
forget about the fact that in the 90s, kids were watching TV shows with sex jokes from the Rugrats and the Thornberries,
Hmm.
it, like full on sex jokes.
I
And
mean, just Ren and Skimpy as a whole, and we all turned out fine.
you all turned out fine. I mean, we're, we're okay. We could be better. We could be better.
There are a few moments, I'm sure.
But it's so weird because the 90s had a lot of problems, okay? And we can kind of you've got a lot of baby boomers that go, "Oh, back in the day, the good old days." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Relax. Just calm down." The 90s though is different cuz I feel like the 90s was like the final frontier until like we enter the 21st century where like it's just hell just broke loose. It's like, "Yeah, make porn films." Yeah, okay, just slap on PG-13. Like, okay, they're showing yeah, who cares? Just put PG-13 on. It's fine. Just get it out there. Oh, lesbians kissing and then making out and having orgies. It's fine. We'll just
It's
call it
fine.
a yeah, we'll just call it a romance movie. It's fine. Just having just a bunch of band members walking up on stage completely naked with no bra on. It's fine.
It's
There's kids in the crowd.
fine.
It's fine. The
It's
parents said
fine.
it's okay for them. That was the 90s. That was the 90s. It was just a free for all. It's just like,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it's all good.
it's all good. You know,
Probably we could go back.
but I don't know. I don't look. Obviously, like there's a lot of consequences that come with that. Of course, like over sexualizing things.
Hmm.
Making people more in tune with being more materialistic. But it did happen. It did happen for a good 15, 16 years. And then all of a sudden, 2010, 2000, around there, like 2010, 2011 came around.
Hmm.
And then, I don't know, just everything just started to
People got
change.
scared. Yeah, and I, it's such a weird example, but like if you're gonna drink, I'd rather you drink at home. Like, I feel like we were exposed to all of that as small adults, and we were fine with it. Like, we didn't need to like. There wasn't a taboo to it. There wasn't like an evil thing for it. Like, it was like,
No.
oh, that's just normal. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. An animated character with a big ass. Like, okay,
It's
fine.
fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
To be honest, like I grew up also with the Powerpuff Girls, and I never like noticed any of the sexual or subliminal messages.
Hmm.
There were a lot. I mean, especially
Yeah.
like watching some of the episodes now, I'm like, damn,
How did that?
Buttercup, can you relax, please? Like,
How,
God,
how'd you get away with this?
yeah, like how many more wedgies do you need to give? Like, Jesus, you know? But as a kid, you're watching it, and like obviously it's a cartoon, and you're just zoning out, and like, this is just what we did as kids.
Hmm.
You're not thinking about that stuff. You're just like, haha, that's funny. And then you make like that sexual joke in school, and then your teacher like, gives you detention because you're
Yeah.
yeah,
And you're like, okay, I won't say that in public anymore, or
yeah,
around adults.
or around teachers. At least they got
Yeah.
me in trouble. But I don't know. I think at the same time, like kids today are way more aware than they ever have before. Like
Hmm.
I've been around enough 5 and 7 year olds where they start asking questions about like sexuality and life and importance, and I'm like, you're 5. You're 5.
Yeah, chill out. We'll talk about it
We'll talk about it
when
later.
it's appropriate. Yeah.
But these kids just seem so aware and so absorbent of like even the old stuff. You know, you'd see some of these kids, like, even though they're like smack dab with iPads and tablets and stuff, but they're watching even cartoons and things from the old. Why do you think they had a re-spin off of the Pride family?
Mm-hmm.
Because there were a lot of people that were watching the old series and they were like, wait, what?
Oh, we can redo this and make more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not as good as the original, but
No, no.
no. And I remember clearly that I used to have to wait up late, like really late, to watch the Pride
Hmm.
family and Kim Possible. Like it was like
Yeah.
11 or 12 o'clock at night, and you're just forcing yourself to stay like awake,
Do
and you're
little
just
cheek slaps and like, I
you're
gotta
just
know
like,
what
I gotta
happens.
know what happens. And that was, I don't know, like that was something that was really inspiring, especially as an artist growing up. It's because you see the stories and stuff, and there's no, they don't make sense. They're not. There's no there's no morality. There's no nothing. You're having fun. You know, you're just
Hmm.
having fun, and I I feel like that gets lost the second you start throwing categories and labels and bandages. It's like you gotta let kids be kids. You gotta let adults be adults. You gotta just let the art speak for itself. You know, and I think that's very
Hmm.
true with your own books. Like, would you ever want somebody to take your story and then say, "Well, we need to make this more appropriate for our audiences"?
I'd be like, but it's fine for its audiences. That's you trying to force it to a different group, to a younger group. Like, in the superhero books, like I like to tell like if parents come with kids, I like to tell them like I think like 15 and above is fine. That there's some curse words in it. It alludes to two characters having intercourse, and like you don't see it, but like it definitely happens.
Yeah,
Um,
it's on the
yeah, but
side. It's on
like
the sound
it's
line.
on the sign. Yeah, but it's like if you want me to rewrite it to be kid friendly, then you're losing a lot of elements that made the book what it is. And
You
it's like
you know,
it's fine to wait. It's fine to wait.
not everything is made for everyone. You know, that's the thing that we kind of get lost to. It's where when you're making a story, it's like, yes, it is important to obviously, like, you know, if you have this business, you know, the revenue and market share and how it will like gross well in movie theaters and on streaming platforms and all of this stuff, especially even when you're writing of like, you know, how well you're doing on Amazon. Oh, it's got picked up by Barnes and Nobles, yada yada. Like, oh, it's
Hmm.
in the stores. But I think what gets forgotten the most is, and I think this is also why Invincible was really successful, is it's a niche market.
Yeah.
The same way that the reason why the indie and the underground scenes is flourishing is because, again, like there's so much information that people just kind of stem to a niche. They're like,
Hmm.
what's new and weird? What's something that's kind of like local and gritty?
Yeah.
And then voila, we got you, Jordan.
I'm local and gritty.
Local and gritty. Oh, but that's something that you only get if you're true to yourself.
Hmm.
It's only something that you get if you're not trying to force a narrative or you're trying to fake a character or a persona or a
Yeah.
personality.
Yeah. There there were times when like after my superhero trilogy was out, I was struggling like what do I write next? And I tried writing what was popular like oh, okay, dragons are really big. Let me write a dragon book. And it wasn't true to who I was or and it wasn't true to my writing and like oh, Faye's really popular and like I tried to write that and again it wasn't true to who I was and what I was feeling and a story that I felt I needed to tell and it wasn't until oh, sorry
You could.
um it's my blood sugar alarm. It wasn't until I fell into the science fiction world with Failing Gravity that the story came out and felt true to who I was and felt true to what I needed to tell and the what I
The,
was feeling at the moment came true to those words and like you said I wasn't faking it.
Is it blaring at you? Because I have a friend of
I
mine
just
that
need to.
has one
Yeah.
of them.
Oh,
She gets like the notifications constantly, and I'm
yeah.
like, what? And she's like, just give me 1 second.
Yeah,
I'm
I
like,
just gotta eat these jelly beans real fast. I'll be good. But yeah, like my blood sugar was high this morning, and of course I overcorrected with breakfast, and it's finally catching up. And
you know what? That is also something that nobody wants to talk about. Is the story behind the the person that's actually making the story. You know, like we
hmm
have our whole lives. You know, in your case, you got a lot of things that are going on. You have a partner. You know, and believe it or not, by the way, that stuff really ties into the way that you're writing. You know,
hmm,
when you I was thinking about this earlier on, right? One of my favorite series, like book series growing up, was Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games.
hmm,
And you know, if you read the books, I'm gonna no offense to Suzanne, like she's not the greatest writer. She's okay, but the way that she writes her story, you can feel that almost like she's talking about her own life, her own
hmm.
struggles, her own things that she's going through. She paints a very interesting perspective of Pan Am, which is technically America,
America.
right? And you fall in love with the story. I don't know any other way. You don't like like get lost in it. You fall in love with the story. You start to feel the pain of what they're going through in the districts. You
hmm
kind of feel squeamish and kind of angry like they are with like the games that they're playing on these people. But I think why it works so well is because she's able to take her life and put that through Katniss Everdeen. Because
Yeah,
Katniss is Suzanne Collins.
it is very real. Like the Katniss is very real, and you can believe the world that Suzanne is telling because you believe Katniss. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Like there are parts in those books where like, oh, that could be way better. It doesn't need to be way better because you're believing it through the character who you believe. And
You're seeing
yeah,
it through, which is that. By the way, we should have talked about this earlier, but it's fine. We could talk about this now. That's something about first narrative, which is I have found is actually the hardest way of writing is first person.
I can't do first person.
I'm
I've
I'm
tried so many times.
I'm trying to do it, and I'm very much struggling. Like I'm already into chapter 4, and I'm like,
Hmm.
it's hard because what happens is when you try to have the characters bouncing off of each other, you try reading it back, and then you start fumbling, and you're like, wait, who's talking to who?
hmm
So the fact that Suzanne Collins was able to write a series, book after book, where it's very much first person narrative and it's being through the eyes and lens of Katniss,
hmm
even if the writing is not perfect, that is some serious skill right there because you're really walking through her steps, like
hmm
from the very beginning of the book towards the end, like when she falls and gets sick in the dome. You're like, I'm literally sitting there like, oh, Katniss, are you? And I'm thinking like, Katniss, are you
Are you
okay?
okay?
Are you gonna be all
hmm
right? Like, are you gonna like?
Like, well, can I get you a cold compress?
But
What do you need, girl?
that's what first person does, and I think that's why it's
hmm
so difficult to do. It's like you're not just writing a story. You're like, like in the roller coaster, like, please be stand
Yeah.
clear of the closing doors, please.
hmm
And you're going through this lens, you're going through those eyes. So the whole story is only through one person's eyes. So the way that they perceive the world and how they
hmm
view other people, their traumas, it's so hard. Jesus Christ. I thought this was freaking easy. It's not.
And there's definitely a nuance to first person writing because, like, when I write third person, I'm still focused in on one character. You only see and feel what they're feeling. But just like being able to separate myself from the character I'm writing, like, I fear that if I wrote first person, I wouldn't be able to make that separation between me and the character. Like, it, I feel like we would stumble into each other. Like, I would have to become this character for however long it took to write this book, and if I if I made the character too much of me, or versus if I started adapting too many characteristics from this character I was writing in my day to day, like I would just fear I wouldn't be able to make that separation between myself and that character. And whereas like third person, I can like like close the door on them when I'm finished writing. Like, yep, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. You do you, I'll do me.
You know, moving on to the next person.
Yeah. But
Yeah, and I think that honestly is, it's not that it's difficult to do, but like you said, it's being able to take a break. Because what
mhm,
happens is, especially when you're trying to create the story and you're trying to create this narrative, if you have to constantly fixate on this character, like again, which very much is how Hunger Games is, because again, the book is very much around Katniss, the entire,
mhm.
all three books. So I think there's now two other. I haven't read the new books. But what happens in your perspective is where you can be able to shut the door and then move on to the next chapter, and then focus onto different elements of being able to build the story. Everything comes with its pros and cons. Even we're talking about with writing, it comes with even film, or even with music, or even with art. When you have that lens perspective of it being told by one character, you lose a lot of elements. That's the con, because then you can't you can't really describe characters too often, because then it's kind of, can you imagine that?
It gets
Like,
repetitive. Yeah, it
it
gets
gets
boring.
weird. It's like, and I bumped into Marshall, and Marshall is 5 feet tall, has black hair, and weighs about 185 pounds.
It's like, how do I know that?
How do you, yeah, like, are you
Yeah.
telling that to Marshall, like, right in front of him while you're talking to him? You're like, hi, Marshall, you're 5'5", you got black hair, and you're wearing a suit. So you can't
Yeah.
you can't add all those elements, and you can maybe like throw in like, oh, this person's like sophisticated and like ahead of its time, so you can kind of, but basically you're causing your writers to go through this whole fixation of where they have to figure out what the characters look like. They got to understand the scenarios that are being played. They kind of some I've had this happen with first person, especially with psychological thrillers. You finish a chapter. Wait, what just happened? Wait, why did she get off the train if the chapter before said that she went off the train 2 months ago? Wait, so is this chapter
Ooh,
happening 2 months prior? Is this talking about
that just
that?
sounds like a messy narrative.
But they do that in psychological thrillers to
Hmm.
throw you off. And that's sometimes where they do the narratives where they go from chapter to chapter, even focusing on characters, to kind of allow you like, oh, and then as you kind of deep in, and again, that's being able to be patient with the process of the story. Is the
Hmm.
reason why they brought this up is because they're having a psychological break and they're reliving the same
Mm.
events over and over again. But you have to be able to trust yourself that,
And trust the author. And yeah. Ooh.
I think what we've learned, especially in this past hour, is it's not easy to be creative in any form of the sense. Like, you could throw as many pieces of paper into a typewriter, but I promise you right now, you're going to struggle.
Mhm. You're gonna
You
have
know?
to allow yourself to fail, allow yourself time to rewrite, and discover what works, what doesn't work. When you mentioned the character descriptions, I love the comparison. Like if character A only wears blue, they can compare that to character B who only wears red. And I always find like that's an easy way to to describe what characters look like without having to like list all their facts out real fast. Like, oh, well, so and so's hair is straight and blonde and very different from mine, brown and curly hair. And that way, like, you're able to show off your main character and how they compare themselves to other characters in their universe. And, if that makes any sense.
No, it does, and sometimes it's nice to be able to have where you can have where people can develop their own interpretation of the characters. By the way, like, one thing that really hits hard, especially when you start describing characters, is you run into blocks. Great example is, like, we talking about tons of different series, like Harry Potter is a great example of it. J.K. Rowling is a great writer, but one of her biggest issues is she is so detailed with her characters that
Hmm.
when it's come to portraying them in live action, like in the movie series and now they're making the television series, it's really hard because we clearly know what Severus Snape looks like from the books. We know
Hmm.
what Hagrid looks like. That's why when we got the new Dumbledore in the Order of the Phoenix, we were kind of
Hmm.
like, what? because
That's not right.
he doesn't look, he's not described like that in the book. Like Chris Columbus actually got the real portrayal of Dumbledore in the very first like the
Mhm.
two movies. So that's the thing about the double-edged sword. It's like where you can be like J.K. Rowling and you make these incredible like 7-book series and you're so detailed with your characters. The second that you go to film portrayal or television portrayal, you're fucked.
Yeah. The and I had an author tell me once, like, it doesn't matter how you describe a character. Your reader is going to picture them one time, and that's how they're always picture them for your whole book. So if like so don't be upset if they don't see the character as you saw it, because their mind's going to picture all those details differently. And so I try to hit like major, like, okay, eye color, hair color, build, if there's a feature like a scar or a blemish that's really important to them. But the rest I kind of leave up to the reader's interpretation, because they're going to do that anyway.
Yeah, and the truth though, it again makes it very hard for it to be adaptable. You know, like we were
Hmm.
saying, it's where again, you know what, there are a lot of artists that don't like collaborating. That's fine.
Hmm.
But, you know, if you constantly have this thing in the back of your head where, you know what, I'm doing my own thing, I don't want to collaborate, I don't want to share, this is my thing, like fuck you, like I'm going to do what I want to. Don't get me wrong, J.K. Rowling is very successful and I think she's a
Hmm.
fantastic writer, but this is what you run into. And she's not the only
Yeah.
writer that suffers from this. It's where you know, I think it's so important as artists to remember is like we're not alone, man. We have other people that will back us. We have other people that will inspire us. We have other people that we can connect with. But
Hmm.
the second you start limiting that, especially with our own writing, and I kind of want to wrap this up with this, you you lose the message. Like you said, you know, allowing the audience to be able to create their own version of the character, allowing other creators to be able to make film adaptations or TV adaptations or maybe a graphic novel. I don't know. Just throwing ideas out there.
Hmm.
Why limit yourself? Why not allow
Yeah.
other people to be able to share the work that you love and you're passionate about too?
I would be so honored if an artist, like, this is how I picture your characters. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I even if they're not like 100% how I picture, I'm like, that's totally fine. I would be so honored.
Yeah. It's just being able to like again get out of your head and realize like yeah, I get it. Like it's a very long road. There's a lot of hurdles and obstacles, but there are other artists out there. And the more that we push away other people, especially in our industry and in entertainment, the more we get lost, the more that we get
Hmm.
isolated. And then I don't see any fun with that. I think some of the most incredible art projects are the ones where you have different peoples collaborating together and making those
Hmm.
realities.
And like the idea you might have might be incredible to you at that moment, but being able to share that with other people and hearing the feedback on, like, that's like I mentioned that writing group I'm in. I'm so fortunate to have them just to be able to spitball ideas and create together. And
Getting all those
yeah,
pieces
just
together. Like,
yeah.
seriously, you know what? Like, telling you, like, this is again the thing that I love about podcasting too. It's not just being able to talk to people, it's being able to collaborate, it's being able to
Hmm.
share, it's being able to experience things, you know? And you know what? Kudos to you. You know, I think you've been able to really do that well with your writing. You've been able to
Thank
create
you.
a series that represents you. And you know what? The more people that you can collaborate with, the more podcasts, the more artists, the more creators, this is how we survive, especially in this generation.
Hmm. We got to rebuild those communities that were kind of lost in those early internet days.
We have to. And you know what? Like, I'm doing it virtually, but we still can do this in all forms of different ways.
Hmm.
Um, I wanted to ask you before we finish up because I know you've got all of your books detailed on your website.
Yep.
Where can these wonderful people find your social
Yeah.
website?
Yeah, some goodies. Like you mentioned, my website is jordanskellerauthor.com. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, all Jordan S. Keller Author. I do post more to Instagram out of all of them. There's a message feature on my website if you have any questions. I'm also a host of the Everyday Writer podcast, so if you're a new writer looking for some advice, we'd love to have you. All of our episodes are little short information bits that me and my co-host Crystal McQueen, she's also an author, have used to get our books ready for publishing. My newest book, Failing Gravity, came out in May. It is a cyberpunk love letter to the band Bad Omen's album, The Death of Peace of Mind. And then you can find my books on Amazon, you can request them at your local bookstore, and you can also request them at your local library.
That's awesome. You know what? Like, you get those people like, I don't know where to find this stuff. Hey, Jordan just told you where you can find it. I'm sure you got plenty of options. Seriously, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. And seriously,
thank you so much for having me.
Come on, it's so great to nerd out and geek out and just be a bunch of freaks for a good hour. Hell yeah.
And just to have like common ideas and non-common ideas, and you can just be able to share, be a person, and not fear that you're gonna upset anybody.
Yeah, like bring the BLT and the roast beef sandwich together. Promise.
It's gonna be delicious. I mean, bacon on anything's perfect.
Oh yeah, 100%. You throw bacon and sausage and eggs and cheese. Oh.
Hungry for lunch? Me too.
Seriously though, thank you so much. Anybody out there, if you want to check out more of the podcast, you can find us at Lost in the Pod, everywhere, anywhere you can find us. Regarding Jordan, if you want to make it a full-time stuff, I will leave a link in the Substack. But click the button.
Click.
So with that, catch you next week. All right, peace out.